off the production line for Supernatural Strength merchandise is the iconic Deep Inside shirt. Ladies and gents, get out there and get your merch. Links in the description, copy and paste it into your browser. Feel the love, motherfuckers. Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a sad day because as you come to us live here today on The Fix, episode 58, I think it is, my technical director, who would usually answer that question, is unable to do so. Why, I hear you ask? Because he's filling his fat face with Kentucky Fried Chicken. Now, as many people who will watch The Fix regularly will know, or have just seen me in passing in the street, I am something of a fat bastard. And therefore, I love a bit of Kentucky Fried Chicken. Have I got any? No. Has the White Oak got any? No. Ryan Blue Bowen couldn't eat it if he did have it, because his face is smashed to bits after having giant removed from his mouth. But he'd still like some. Nobody's got any. Only Ray. You bastard, Ray. Massive bastard. Mm-mm. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Fix 58. We're underway. We've got Ray on mute because he's eating. We've got Ryan Bowen, who was on a 2.5-hour live feed last night. He's going to tell us about that in just a moment. Looking very sexy. The United States of America. Yes, it's the White Oak. Now, bit of an observation, guys. Notice that my fine fat self here, rocking the Fix shirt. White Oak there, rocking the Fix shirt. Even Ryan Blue Bowen in Brisbane, Australia, rocking the Fix shirt. These were sent out at the same time. And Raymond's shirt has not arrived. What the fluff is good? What does that tell us about Latvia? Is what I want to know. I mean, if you said to me,
I identify as a vegan.
Country, I'd pick Latvia. You're only 2 hours away. Not necessarily swimming.
Brexit, man. It's because you wanted to leave us, leave us behind.
It's bad. It is terrible. So, guys, just before we get things going with this, I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to our show sponsors. Ladies and gentlemen, this show is brought to you by, let me get it so it actually appears, there it is, the greatest beef jerky in the world. Western Survivor, ladies and gents. Adam Vandal's very own. Remember, Adam Vandal is an arm wrestler. Western Survivor is an arm wrestler owned and controlled product. When Western Survivor do well, arm wrestling does well. Ladies and gents, back it. It also tastes amazing. Biggity bong! That's nice.
I received my 5 packets last week. I ate them in an hour. Sorry.
Yeah, they are amazing.
Yeah.
This particular
Not even
one,
sorry.
Is that everybody's favourite? Or is it just mine?
Yeah.
How good's that?
Yeah.
It's been so long. I never got the second box. Ray's T-shirt didn't arrive. My jerky hasn't arrived.
Hey, this is the wizard's tits. Let me tell you now. This and the cracked peppercorn.
Yeah, that's the one I like.
Hey,
Cracked pepper,
put hair on his chest. That will. Put hair on Ray's chest. He's only 14 years old. Got a bit of a theory about that, actually, Ray. Because, like cat years, the thing is in England, if it's cat years, every human year, a cat does 9 years, apparently. Equivalent. Okay?
I'm opposite.
You're like that. You're the other way around. Every human year, you don't do a year. Yeah, you're only, so now, in actual Ray years, you're probably only like 16. If you were not, Ryan, if you were Ryan, you'd be dead. great for Ryan. Mate, Ryan Bowen. Tell us what you've had. Tell us how you've ended up like you are now.
What are you doing with my face or what?
Yeah. It's gone down.
Well, yeah, just a couple of days ago I had some tooth surgery. They had to saw my tooth in half, drill into the bone, and do a whole bunch of nasty stuff. So yeah, I'm kind of yogurt and custard. That's kind of me at the moment, and yeah, it's not the best, but I'm drugged up on painkillers and friggin' everything under the sun. I'm a bit spaced out, a bit nauseous, but hey, we're here, we're good to go.
Remarkably, you are, mate. It's going to be a pretty difficult evening, I would imagine, for you though. There, it's not ideal when you've. Have you got like all the, the padding that they put in there, all the stuff that they fill it in with when you've had a big...
That's all come out, but the face just feels like it's just yeah, it's full of its own padding right now. So, I think, is it visible? Is it visible to you guys or not?
It's not that bad. It's not like you don't look. How it can be like you look like you've got a broken jaw and it be out here. It's not that bad. You know Ray Liepins. You're not looking like. I don't think women are going to be writing in saying seriously, it's that guy's number. That ain't going to happen, son. But it's all right. You're getting married.
Yeah, it's all good. I got the. Apparently I look like Justin Timberlake with his haircut. I've been told.
Okay, whoever told you that, it's on more drugs than you are. I think speaking on behalf of everybody, I'll just check. Paul.
I don't know.
Yeah.
So you got to take a weekend.
Ed Sheeran.
That's like a good haircut, though.
That's a good question. Where am I on the sliding scale of Ed Sheeran to Justin Timberlake?
I'm going more towards Ed. Let's not talk about it. Grab a guitar, come back, I'll tell you.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I like to consider myself somewhere between George Clooney and Brad Pitt in terms of the looks thing, but, I don't think many people are buying into it. I think most people, I'm somewhere between the Michelin Man and the Marshmallow Man.
I was thinking more, maybe somewhere between Ricky Gervais and Brad Pitt for you.
Oh, that? Yeah.
You get that?
Heavily towards Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because I don't know how much Ricky Gervais is getting.
Yeah.
But it's probably not as much as Brad Pitt. I reckon if it, I reckon Brad Pitt's got more experience in that kind of thing. That's where I'd like to be. So, anyway, it's an arm wrestling show, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a modelling contest. It's a bloody good job. We'd all starve to death, except maybe Ray and Paul. Me and Ryan are fucked. Mate, I'm only lumping you in with me because I know you can take it. You're used to taking abuse.
Yeah.
For you. But I see you're getting married and everybody's getting measured up for your wedding. I saw the other day that Lachlan Adair was. Yes,
getting married, and it just happened to be that I booked the same tailor that I had made me a suit back in September of 2016, and the dude still had all of my measurements. And man, when he told me that, my eyes lit up. I'm like, hang on a second, you seriously tell me? And I was so excited to compare them. Interestingly, YouTube pointed out that I had made crotch gains. My crotch had added 4 inches. Apparently,
you spent more time in Brisbane.
Tell us more about that, please. Tell us more about that.
But that apparently that's just a fashion trend in the way that they measure crotches now. But I'm going to take it as a gain.
Is it on Pound for Pound Arm Wrestling website? I'm going there. It doesn't matter.
I must admit, how's that? We need to get a bit more information on this. This is just a new thing about how they measure crotches, is it? I wish my missus would start that. Seriously, on your scale, that's 8.5 inches, no?
But most interestingly was the wrist measurements, the upper arm measurements. He didn't have a specific forearm measurement, unfortunately, but he had wrist and he had upper arm in a relaxed position. And the wrist had put on 3/4 of an inch in 4.5 years, and the upper arm had put on 1.5 inches in.
So what's your upper arm now? Here we go.
What's going on here?
You're selling some of your merch.
You're looking for the crotch expander.
I couldn't find it. It's not there. Keeping all the secrets to himself. I need to go to Brisbane.
But the upper arm, the just arm by my side, upper arm, I think it went from 14.5 to the 16.25 or something like that. Whatever it was up at.
So you're relaxed just by your sidearm measurement is 16 and plus inches.
Yeah.
That's pretty solid, mate. And what's your body weight right now?
95 kilos on the dot.
Okay.
210.
So you're not going to be going out of the middleweight division anytime soon.
No, I can
see that.
I can
spiritual.
Yeah. I tend to put on 2 to 3 kilos a year historically since I've been in the sport. So I think I can. I'm still within range of that 200 pound mark if I get asked to be there for another 3-4 years, I reckon.
I was going to ask the same question of Paul, to be honest, because Paul, we get a lot of comments in there, and who was I on to the other night? I'll tell you who I was on to, Brent Rackers. Okay. And by the time this video comes out, the Brent Rackers Deep Inside will already have been released, so you'll see that. But Brent Rackers said, Paul Linn, even the middleweight now, he looks bigger. And I said, yeah, when he comes on the show, he looks very big, he looks solid, he looks ready. Every week he makes me feel bad about myself. But, what is your body weight, mate? Where are you knocking about right now?
215.
You've not changed. You do look like are you back in the gym a lot more regularly then?
No, I mean, I've always been. I never stopped.
You've never stopped?
No, like since ever. But, no, I'm pretty consistent. Every once in a while, like if I eat like crap, I'll get up to about 220, usually over the winter. But it's really all about the t-shirt size.
Is that what it is? It's just giving
I mean, half the time people tell me I look like a super or whatever is when I'm light.
Mm.
If I'm cutting weight or if I'm lean in the summer, a lot of times that's when how are you not 230? Because I'm 210. I don't know what to tell you.
and you've no aspirations to move from that weight class, have you, mate?
No, my body doesn't. I can't see myself handling that much like more muscle mass as I get older. I actually feel like I would like to gravitate to even lower body weight at some point. Cause I mean, I fight so hard with my diet. I eat so clean, just to maintain that, as my metabolism slows, I don't want to go in the opposite direction, So I'd like to stay right here where I'm at. I have no aspirations of putting any more size on.
No, it does look like in the US right now, things are starting to free up a little bit, open up a little bit. I think that it's not too bad for that in Latvia at the moment, is it, Ray? You guys are you're still on point for the August event in Norway if that doesn't go south.
We're in full lockdown.
You're on total lockdown. You can't go anywhere now.
No, I can go anywhere. I have no problem. I just have to sit in quarantine when I get back, like I did in Dubai. But I'm expected to go places, but we'll see.
Now, very interestingly, we in the UK, dateline check end of March, we should be getting a relaxation of things around July, like quite a big relaxation of things. We're told, Now, if that was the case, it is. A lot can happen in that period of time, but at the moment, the conversations in the Arnold Classic Europe have started again, and in the time we've been away, Ryan Bowen's whole demeanour, whole schedule has changed. He will no longer be pulling Rob Bridget Jr., so that puts him back in the battleground for him. He's back in the mix, mother fluffers, because if you can't pull Rob Bridget Jr., looks like you're back in.
Man, there are so many people I want to pull. The list is endless, so a battleground suits me really well. The more the better.
It's just sort of finding that up because the Arnold Classic Europe looks like it would be getting away, I should say. We know that there's a Giants Live Strongman event, arena show at that same competition, at that same event on the Sunday, which is the 3rd of October. So the plan right now would be that probably the Friday and Saturday, I would imagine, that there will be some arm wrestling there. The Arm Wars Phoenix at the Arnold Classic would take place, which would be awesome. And it'd be great if we could get the Fix Live there, if we could get you guys head to head, we could get the White Oak featured in something as well, which would be quite cool. So a couple of things were bounced around the other day on my show, and I wanted to sort of address this with you guys. So I'm on a live with RVJ. Okay. And, conversation goes, towards, okay, match activity, this, that, and the other, who he'd want to pull. And he'd been getting a tremendous amount of messages across social media and direct to him talking about why does he not travel or pull any of the top Eastern European guys. Now, obviously, the answer to that question is that he's been kept busy by the World Arm Wrestling League, and if you look at how often he was competing, it was definitely, he was regularly on it, you know. Now, within that period of time, I think he feels like he's been a little bit underrated, not getting the recognition that he potentially should get. And he wants to sort of change that. He wants to get to a scenario where the respect level for RVJ goes up. And I've been talking to him about this on and off for a long period of time. And he fined it down to sort of a wish list of individuals. And the one that I want out of there is a Bulgarian, Sasho Andreev. Now, I wanted to sort of speak to you about that and get your take on it, guys, because in my mind, I absolutely love that match. And I know you're very familiar with him, Ray. You know, in fact, we've seen Sasho compete, so we know where his level's at. Because, let's be honest, within COVID, there's a lot of people say, oh, yeah, this guy might be amazing. We don't know where he's at during COVID. Has he dropped off? But we've just seen Sasho do his thing with Irekli over in Turkey. And I wanted to sort of gauge your individual levels of interest on what do you think about that match?
Sasho, one-on-one in a super match format, even though he's not used to that, is even more dangerous than he is in tournaments, in my opinion. Because basically, just like RVJ, he's kind of slow starter, but there's no escaping him. It's his forearm is so short. He applies so much pressure. We have seen this time and time after again. If you are not super fast puller, Sasho will beat you. Like I don't know how many times. Like he has won world championships starting from 70 up to 90 kilos, you know, and being the top dog for I don't know how many years. Like in WAF world championships, it's Prudnik tries to beat him. Spartak Zuluyev, Hajimurat, he was faster and stronger, and he had better technique to beat him on that day, I believe. But put him in a super match, and maybe we'll see something different. Again, placing RVJ is all the things that you said. It's very hard because I really don't know. I will pick Sasho as favorite for all of those things that RVJ can get out of him. Doesn't matter. You can take his hand. Doesn't matter. You can pull him. You can doesn't matter. What you need to do is quick finishes, control the center and things like that. His strengths are, I believe he's very strong, he's very durable, but Sasho is different beast. Like, I was looking at Moldova videos, like, for past week, you know. Everyone's like, yes, Hutchings beat Sasho. You look at that video and you can see the timeline. Like 3 minutes, 5 minutes before, maybe a little bit more, Sasho was in a war with Krasimir. And then he got Hutchings. You know, and everyone's saying like they were fresh for fresh. And I was there, I was watching, but I don't remember like what was when things happened. And it was before they were sitting in hook with Krasimir, and then everyone jumped all over him. And the guys that basically had the flash pins on Hutchings and Sasho were the fast ones, like Alan Makayev, Prudnik, things like that. So Sasho is favorite. I believe he's 90 kilos. We need to see a super match with him and Hajimurat for that, at least from WAF side, the undisputed crown champion. You know. So
Ray, for my own perspective and everything, where do you think Sasho would stand with Hutchings in a slow rolling hook, fresh for fresh, just for my own reference?
I believe like fresh for fresh.
Yeah.
Of course, it's very hard to say, but I would pick Sasho, especially now.
Okay.
Because like he's so
at the same weight. At the same weight.
At the same weight. If they're at the same weight, I would pick Sasho every day. If Hutchings is bigger, again, I don't know where he is right now. We saw Sasho just competing with very dangerous Irakli. You know, Irakli has taken hand over everyone, and he can stop roll almost anyone. He just manhandled him after first round, which I believe he just was sleeping. You know, Sasho, if like number one, number two guy in the world under 90 kilos, it's like prove me wrong. You know, it's the guy. Accolades talk about themselves every year, because like every year I was in WAF Worlds or Europeans, there was some contender that was trying to beat him, and they most of the times failed. Like we would look, okay, this is a good lineup for someone to beat Sasho, because for first years after he went to seniors, he didn't lose. You might see him getting second, because again, I know this from stories. Bulgarians get paid by one arm. So if you win both arms, it doesn't matter. You will just get paid by one arm. So he will give it to his teammate. And they were, I think it was Malaysia. I'm like, what's happening here? They're like, nah, we just gave it. It doesn't matter, you know. So, and at that time, 80 kilos, something like that. Yeah.
I find that hard to stomach. I'm going to just dive in and say, you know, if you're the man and somebody comes in, it's a world championship, like, yeah, just lie down for your,
doesn't care.
For me, I'm like, wait a minute.
I know. Look at the Kazakh. Look at the Kazakh team. Kazakh team is like, so you're gonna be number one, you're gonna be number two. They're like, okay, because it's all their livelihood. Everything is on the line. And if you will see Megjan giving up, you will see Talgat giving up. You know, you will see it time and time after again. When we want to see those matchups happen, they're like, no, you will not waste energy with each other. You just, you know, F with everyone else. And it's, you know, it's, for them, it's more than winning, because they win. Doesn't matter if you're the champ on right arm, you know, and your government just pays for one arm, or your coach said, because it's big money involved for them, at least for them. But I'm picking Sasho under 90 kilos with anyone. He's so hard to beat. So hard to beat.
What I like about Sasho is that he's an extreme example of a biomechanical setup for sport. I love the sport that we've got, our tall, lanky types, all the way down to our Sashos. And I think Sasho is the most compact of elite arm wrestlers that have been all the way to the top. So for me, he's a really fascinating example to study. I'd love to grip up with him in a practice pool just so I can feel what that compact shape actually does and the problems it presents. And as you say, I think people struggle with Sasho because he's the extreme example and they don't get to practice with anyone else that's quite like him. Todd Hutchings, obviously in the USA, he's another one that does have a short forearm, but I think Sasho's is even shorter again. Like,
oh yeah.
So when
Sasho as an individual is very short.
Sasho is shorter than me.
Yeah. Do we know what is he? 5'4" or something like that? Like, what is he? 5'5"?
He's not short. He's not tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say 160 something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. He's not. He's definitely. You know, put it this way: in a limbo competition against Latin, he'll piss it.
But you know, when you ask the question, Neil, on Rob and Sasho, it's an interesting one because Rob had the rivalry with Todd for so long. They did go back and forth, even though Todd got the big match wins. There's plenty of wins for Rob over Todd as well, and Sasho is someone like Todd who's going to want to be at home in the straps against someone like Rob. And the first question is, can Sasho get there against the hand of Rob from that short forearm? It's not always that easy. And no doubt his back pressure is huge, but the fact that Todd Hutchings struggled to slip against Rob from time to time could present a problem for Sasho as well. That's one consideration. And then it's if it gets into the strap, I do have to think that, the supination of Sasho, the relentless side pressure and that elbow conditioning that he's got to that extreme level, I think that he would be able to do the job. So I think it would come down to whether Rob could control him outside of straps, as to whether I think Rob could win.
Interesting. They're very different stylistically, Sasho and Todd. But just to pick up on a couple of points, obviously, you know, that we've seen that Sasho's got great staying power over his career. I think that the match with Todd Hutchings, I do believe was an accurate reflection of that match on that day. But I also think that Todd Hutchings is almost the acid weapon to beat someone like Sasho, just because of the fact that he may be stronger. You know? And you know, like, I think you hit it on the head, Ray, when you said there is no way around Sasho. There might well be a way through him, but it's just that how many people are strong enough to actually go through that. I'll tell you what, it's a very, very rare air you're breathing if you can go through that, dude, because he is strong. Yeah, you know, like Ryan's comment, I think people struggle with Sasho because he's that extreme example of it, and I agree with that to some extent, but I also think people struggle with Sasho because he's strong as fuck. That's the thing, because he's not neat and tidy, he's not diverse, but what he's got is kind of that old school Sylvain Perron, there it is, I've supinated onto literally joint, and I'm just gonna, but he's herky-jerky, mistimed, weirdo, he'll just go diving in at you at a certain, and it's like anything else. I preach the gospel on this every time I go to an arm wrestling table. In fact, my entire career was sort of underpinned by this, that if you can take someone out of their comfort zone in terms of the linearity, their bone line position, because so many people in arm wrestling, 90% of people or more, 98% of people train based upon, I'm comfortable in this position. It's linear. There's so much, I could get carried away here. I watched a thing the other day with one of my favourite arm wrestlers in the world, Matt Mask, and Matt Mask has a tennis ball here and a tennis ball behind his lap. And if you haven't got over to Matt Mask's channel, ladies and gents, get over, check it out. Matt Mask just started an arm wrestling channel. If there's a more exciting arm wrestler in the world than Matt Mask, I don't know. That guy's ace. But Matt's got a tennis ball here and a tennis ball behind the guy's lap, and he's talking about movement for form. The interesting thing about that is, whilst that is effective in terms of training that positional, integrity, the carryover into actual real life arm wrestling, the guy that trains in that style is the kind of guy I'd love to arm wrestle, because he's doomed if you get him outside of that line then, because he's not working those forms. For me, arm wrestling isn't about perfect, neat lines. It's just so opposite to that. It's taking opportunities. It's throwing feints in a fight. It's angle and change of direction. And one of the things that works well is when you can combine those factors. And I think that Sasho does that exceptionally well. And like Ryan was saying, going back to sort of his point, I agree that sort of the dimensions and package that's represented by Sasho is extremely unusual. Very, very few people. If you sort of track your mind, it's like we talked about with Jerry Caderet. Try to picture another Sasho in any weight class.
So did you talk to, I didn't get to see the live, Neil. Did you talk to Rob about that? What was his response if you did?
Dude had a hard on.
That's what I mean. So that was going to be my devil. That was going to be my devil's advocate.
Mate,
that was going to be my devil's advocate, because everybody's saying that, like, we're saying that Sasho's the favorite, and I don't necessarily disagree, but Rob is such an enigma in that, like, what gets him going and what doesn't. Like, if Rob was to pull Ryan or Rob was to pull myself, I don't know if he would get as dialed in as he would for a match of that caliber, because now he has the opportunity to be on kind of a world stage, and really prove his worth. So, if Rob decided to say, you know what, I'm training between now and, whenever that match is, 100% focused, like in a similar fashion to what Ryan's saying that Lachlan's doing, I think Rob turns into an absolute weirdo just because of his tools.
I couldn't agree more, mate. As usual, whenever you speak, Paul, it's worth listening. And that's another perfect example of it right there, because I could not agree more with that. The thing is, let me tell you a story, right? We had a boxer in England. I think I've mentioned it before on shows. So we had a boxer in England who was a Welsh lad. His name was Joe Calzaghe. Okay. And a lot of Joe Calzaghe's career, the press here in the UK, the media, poured scorn on Joe Calzaghe, said Joe Calzaghe ain't that good. has Joe Calzaghe fought? He's not fought anybody. He hasn't fought this guy, and they'd ream off guys that he hadn't fought. It might be Steve Collins, might be Nigel Benn, Chris Eubank at the time was one, Michael Watson, got all the guys around that era. And he ended up fighting Eubank a couple of times. Chris Eubank, who was the world champion then, and a really, really well-rounded, exceptional boxer, really technically gifted, a lot of shots, both hands, mega. A very charismatic guy. And I remember after that fight, they were interviewing Eubank, who was like that supremely confident lad, you know. And Eubank was like, God, that, you know, anybody out there who doesn't think that Joe Calzaghe's for real, you have no idea. He is serious in every respect, you know. Calzaghe won the fight. And he went on to win other fights which cemented him, where people now, if you talk about Joe Calzaghe, pretty much universally recognised as an absolute fucking savage. You know, everybody's like, yeah, he's an animal, mate. Mega. But at the time, I remember the struggles he went through to get that recognition. And everybody was in the same boat because the media gives you a perception. And I think that Rob Vigent is a very sensitive person in that respect. He does live it. He does appreciate, he's very confident, but he also, at the same time, has his inner demons, and he's got that desire to be proven, desire to be the proven entity, you know, where he can then say, you know what, I'm going to pull this guy and I'm going to beat this guy, and then all of him, everything that Ray just talked about. How many WAF world titles has Sasho got, mate? Do you know? I don't know. We're talking multiple world championships.
I first saw him in 2013. I think he won juniors, at least with one arm. He started training for 2 months.
But whatever way you cut it, on anybody's dial, on anybody's radar, if you know about the sport of arm wrestling and you mention the name Sasho, everybody's like, mega. You cannot deny it. So, in Rob's mind, it comes to me, you know what I mean? If he goes in there and he cracks Sasho,
he's the man.
He's the fucking man. Ray said a minute ago, Sasho might be the man, under 90, in the world.
Rob's been pulling, 17 years or something in the sport, and if you look at what he's done on paper in the North American scene, it's nothing short of being remembered as one of the legends of North American arm wrestling. But he's never, I think so many times he's heard, I've seen it since I've been around in sport where people have expressed that we want to see him in Eastern Europe, beat as Zlotiter or whatever, and it hasn't happened. I think I even know when I went to the Zlotiter, I heard.
But why would it, Ryan?
Yeah.
Why?
Honestly, mate, let's just encapsulate that now. If I was Rob Vigent Jr., I would put me on puppy. What the fuck? Why would I want to do that? Honestly, why would I?
Yeah, I get it as well. But what is interesting is that he's now coming to a point where he feels like he wants to, and that's the evolution that I find fascinating.
Correction. He wants to pull those arm wrestlers. Though he wants to pull. He has no desire to go and pull in necessarily that format. Or I don't think that's the case because there's too many questions in that format, and that's my problem with it a lot of the time. And I go back and look, my biggest wins in my entire arm wrestling career are my WAF world titles, the EAF European titles. Very proud of them. But do they cement me in my own mind as definitely the guy that day? No. Because it wasn't a one-on-one. There was other hurdles. How can I say that, okay, that guy wasn't a bit tired, or this guy wasn't a bit tired, or this guy... my way of doing that was try to get consistency, go every country, everywhere, pull that guy many times, and if at the end of our career, I've got more wins than you've got on me, then I'm pretty sure that I'm the man. If I've got similar, we're similar. If you kicking my ass more times than I'm kicking yours, then you're probably the man. Over a lot of years, you know what I mean? But you just want to know. I love the Supermatch thing
I agree with that entirely. I'm a Supermatch fan. For me, that's the best way for me to develop my own game and my own personal ladder and all that I climb. It's through the use of Supermatches. So I get it. I'm fascinated. I'm fascinated that Rob is excited by that. And I think that's a good thing. I'm saying that is, it's nice to see that Rob wants to do this, as opposed to happy to stay in North America. I know he's got a big family and all that sort of stuff, and he hasn't had that ability before. But yeah, those sorts of matches, as Herman Stevens put it, a Rob v anyone in Eastern Europe, updates the story on the balance of power globally. It really does.
Potentially, I agree, mate, and it potentially rewrites it, doesn't it? It's potentially like that. Whoa.
It fills in a big gap that we don't know. It's a gap that we don't know. It fills it in. So
I guarantee that people in the comments that'll come on and go, don't be stupid. Rob Vigent Jr. can't deal with these guys. He'll get smashed. We'll see.
Yeah, he might. You know what I mean? He might, depending on the version that shows up. But like, I got a lot of respect for Rob on a lot of levels, beyond just arm wrestling, kind of the way he thinks and stuff. And if you really look at him, like he was supposed to be kind of like the next John Brzenk, right? Like he's got all the tools genetically and everything. He moves well, everything needed to be like the next John Brzenk. However, he didn't really commit himself to go ahead and travel like John did. So he's done the accolades in the United States, maybe pseudo similar to John, but he never got over and arm wrestled the Giants or the Europeans. And I think that's just because it wasn't really, Rob didn't value it that much. I feel like he's very much a classic case of a very genetically gifted person who didn't have to work really hard, so didn't quite value those things quite as much, I think. And that's not a dig in any way, shape, or form. It's more like here we are, maybe like Ryan's saying, he's coming into a transition in his life where he's deciding to care. I think if he decides to care and value the stuff, I think that we actually see what his potential would have been early on in his career. But I also kind of identify with him too. Like, what is his motivation to get in the plane and arm wrestle the best? He's got a family. He's got other endeavors. So I understand how that can kind of play on. And he also seems like he kind of goes through peaks and valleys, based on how he feels about the sport as a whole. So it looks like we're going into one of those peaking phases. And I think if we catch Rob at the right time, we could see that John Brzenk-esque talent really come out. We've yet to see it. I'm really excited by the idea of it. But then there's also the flip side that maybe the Sasho match or something similar is slated. And we hope Rob takes it super serious and we hope his camp is great, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he just kind of, drifts and goes over there and has a lackluster showing. That's also a possibility as well. But I'm a strong believer that the outcome really lies in Rob's own focus. I think he has the ability, he has the tools to beat everybody pretty much at that weight class if he puts his mind to it.
I agree, mate. I think on it. I mean, it's funny when the Ryan match came about, and we were like, we had a lot of banter and we were taking the mick and stuff like that. And I said, I mean this in the nicest possible way, right? This isn't meant, but all that stuff that came up about the steroids and stuff like that.
Right.
And I said, and I still would say, I am against my stance on steroids is I'm not pro steroids. Largely because of the fact that, Jesus Christ, what clue did you need? Supernatural. You know what I mean? I've got two young boys that I want to arm wrestle one day if they want to arm wrestle, and I don't want them to have to make a decision to be a world-class arm wrestler where they are forced to take steroids. It's that simple. And for anybody out there that, look, I'm not judging people. A lot of my best friends take steroids. And they are not bad men. They're great men. In fact, they're men I absolutely love. And if you speak to them, we're good mates, and we've talked about this openly. I don't disrespect at all the person that takes steroids and does what they do. But I do get a little bit frustrated when you get people come on and they'll say things like, oh, yeah, there's this misconception that, steroids is just gives you a big advantage, but you need to just, you still need to put in the work and all like that. Yeah, everybody gets that. That line is getting old. So fucking old. Drop it. Here's the quick counter. Single silver bullet counter. If they're no good, what the fuck are you taking them for, dude?
Why are they banned?
Why you take them? If they do nothing at all, there's no real benefit. What the are you taking them for?
You know what's funny when you apply this to Rob, right? So normally when you make an assumption about, all right, somebody, whether they're on some form of PED or not, it's usually based off of peaks and valleys, right? So you see this guy show up, he's bloated or whatever, or he looks 30 pounds bigger, whatever the case may be. And you're like, okay, telltale sign or whatever. Or, you know, performance, like one day they come in super strong, the next day they don't show up, right? So what's so funny about that is that, and I believe wholeheartedly that Rob is 100% natural, but he kind of is that guy. You know what I mean? And it's not necessarily about appearance, but like, just think about it. If Rob trained for 8 weeks and showed up like rock strong, like dominant as hell, what are people going to say? Oh, he must be juiced up. He must have hit a cycle to do that. No, this is just Rob committing himself. So there are also people out there who, you know, just based off of natural ability are going to show what would be considered a telltale sign of maybe PED use. And Rob, being that Rob's a natural dude, he's almost like the exception to the rule because he's so good without training. So some guys can show up just training and have basically the same effect. I don't know. It's a weird subject.
For me, that subject is something that, you'll never get a clear answer in a public forum from anyone. And that's just, you just have to know that. I'm sure you guys are all aware, in small circles, people will be very different with you in terms of,
oh yeah, there's a stigma attached to it, right? And ultimately, there's a stigma attached to it. Now, let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Sorry, on.
You go, what you can say. I've lost it.
Well, I was just going to say, people always twist it up like it's, you know, you're acid one side or acid the other side, and if your view on steroids is a certain way, then you think that everybody who takes steroids is a complete bastard. Yeah. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. Yeah. Listen, if there's a competition where it's no holds barred, no holds fucking barred. I can honestly tell you, I personally never went to an arm wrestling competition in my life, ever, where I gave a shit about weight class or whether the dude was on steroids or not.
Right.
I couldn't care that. It's about you and how you're competing on. I couldn't care less whether a guy's on steroids or not. If you want to you're a big boy. Do what you want to do. Yeah. If you want to take steroids, take them. I'm not taking them. That's all I'm saying. Yeah. And if I can beat you, I'll beat you. And if you can beat me, you beat me. Job done. I'm not going to go and whine about it. I couldn't give a shit who's on
my first experience with the topic was really through football at the college level. And D2, steroid use was pseudo rampant. Especially, you know, with the larger guys playing up front and everything. And, you know, you get, this is my first exposure to it. And you have like a decision to make. And for me at the time, it was a clear cut decision. There's no reason for me to do this. There's no reason for me to risk failing a drug test, to lose scholarship money when I see this guy who goes home, over summer and comes back 25 pounds bigger and bloated and everything else. And then we do the same hitting drills that we do, you know, 4 months ago, and I still dominate him just the same. There's no reason for me to do it. But like, it's really everybody's moral compass and what are you really relying on? You know, and how far are you willing to go depending on what your genetic potential is? And I've been blessed enough to really been able to just rely on, you know, consistency over time. But that's a downfall for me because, you know, when it comes to the next level, when I peak per se for a match, it might not be as high as somebody else peaks. So everybody thinks about it. I've got no judgment of it either. So I really don't care. Like Neil said, the match doesn't matter. If whatever somebody chooses to do, that's their own life.
Well, it's the fair thing. The fair thing comes into it all the time. And as I was saying, if you've got an event that's no holds barred and everybody knows there's nothing on it, and fine, you want to take steroids, go in, take it, couldn't care less. If you win, you win. Everybody knew it was an open tournament, it was no holds barred, we went in, we arm wrestled, that guy won, he was on steroids, so get on with your life. That's how it is. Similar situation. Let's say, for example, your world deadlift record holder was Ed, now it's Thor. Okay, so we say Thor. He's got notoriety. He's got made himself, you know, very famous and popular by his enormous size and physicality and the fact that he lifted 501 kilos. Okay? And you might get somebody who'll come online and say, oh, this guy, that's not impressive because he took steroids or he did it. You know, I'm not commenting on whether he took steroids or not. That's up to him. He knows. Everybody do their own thing. But what I'll say is this. Let's say he did, right? If he wanted to do that. But then he's going to try and lift half a ton or more. There is a risk attached to doing that. You know, there is a risk attached to taking steroids. There is a risk attached to picking half a ton up. It may destroy your back. It may damage things that never recover. I remember before Eddie did the 500 deadlift, Zydrunas Savickas, right? Arguably the strongest individual that's ever lived. It's certainly one of the best of all time, and most strength aficionados will say, yeah, Zydrunas probably the best strongman of all time, right? So, dude knows what he's talking about. And I'm hosting a Giants Live VIP session, probably 500 people in there, all rabid strength fans. And the microphone comes to Zydrunas Savickas. And dude in the crowd says, yeah, Zydrunas, you know, we're going to see Eddie try the half-ton deadlift tonight. Do you think he can do it? And Zydrunas, in his usual super slow, he like slow motions over to the microphone, takes the mic, looks out, very, very serious look in his eyes, and he says, okay, Eddie is my friend, and I really like him and I admire him for trying this. But I'm going to say no, he won't be successful tonight. I don't think he can do it. And I'm also going to say that I hope he comes through the event safely and doesn't get injured, because we're getting to the levels now where we are talking about serious risk to your health from doing this, in terms of we don't know. It's uncharted territory. You know, it could be a situation where you have some kind of very serious injury as a result of trying to lift that weight. So at that time, the belief was that that was the ceiling. And once you get to that ceiling, you're risking things, you know, we know. You start lifting very, very big, heavy weights. There's a kid that got injured the other day on Larry's channel, bless him. Hope he's recovered fine. But that was horrific. Nobody wants to see it. But in the back of your mind, have you got an awareness that you start lifting heavy weights is dangerous? Well, if you don't have, you fucking well should. Because, yeah, it's dangerous. So, if a dude says, you know what, I'm going to set my stall out and I'm going to get huge and strong as, and I'm going to lift something that nobody's ever lifted before, and if that gets him fame and notoriety, good on you. That's fine. Crack on. Do it. And that provides that thing that everybody wants to see. It gives everybody the spectacle. It's the superhuman factor that they've got there, you know. By the same token, I would hope that, and I know that, a lot of the guys who do use also have respect for the guy that will walk in natural and is a bad mother fluffer. And if you're going to an event which is a natural event, and it should be something like the WAF Worlds and the AF, there's kind of, for me, almost a respect level there that, yeah, you know what, I'm not going to take anything. I'm going to show up and see how I do. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Having that distinction between, that's a natural event, that's NHB, it's on. You know? Yeah. Then every man has an opportunity to make a choice. You're not taking someone else's choice from them.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You shouldn't ever take anyone else's choice from them. And it was interesting, the first time I ever asked anyone senior in the sport, and I've had plenty of people senior in the sport that I've had the opportunity to chat with as I've grown up through the sport. And years ago, I asked the question, so where do PEDs sit in the sport in your opinion? And I asked everyone that I came across, and it was usually the same sort of story that we just heard there, in that you don't, first of all, you do not need performance enhancing drugs to become an elite arm wrestler. You don't. But there are moments where a certain tournament, a certain super match, a certain thing will be on the line where you will likely face an opponent, in your opinion, that for that moment will use that to peak higher than they normally can peak. And on many occasions, that will leave you with a choice. Are you going to do that for that moment as well? And this is throughout super matches, throughout things like the Nemiroff, throughout the Zloty, all those sorts of tournaments where we, as you said, Neil, we know, it's not a tested thing. And so it's very easy to see. You look at the lineup of Zloty athletes and look at the lineup of IFA athletes, the skin tone is different. The blood pressure is high in these guys, and the blood pressure is low in these guys. It's very obvious to see, and it just is what it is. But it's not something, as you said, as long as there's no cross pollination of that, and then that's where the cheating really does come into it. Is that, and that's with the match that I was potentially going to have with Rob, when Rob said I wanted to be drug tested, and I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I mentioned to Rob that I had taken something prior to the Zloty tour. And for me, and then we get into the debate of, yes, if you've ever once taken stuff, it has a carryover effect that will last forever. That is true. I don't disagree with that at all. And that does blur the lines then of, I've spoken to, for instance, I was quite transparent with the Australian Armwrestling Federation President, Phil Rasmussen, when I went to Zloty tour. I told him, hey, just so you know, this is what I'm doing prior to the Zloty tour, yada, yada, yada. If you don't want me to pull nationals again, I'm happy never to pull nationals again, because this is the path that I've chosen. And I want to see how high I can get as an arm wrestler in that respect. And for that event, I'm doing that. And he was really cool with that. And it's interesting because it's on one hand, like I said, small circles of respect and trust. You feel very comfortable having those conversations. But to have that conversation in a public space, it's really messy. It's really messy for a lot of reasons, because there's a lot of people that are taking PEDs that will, in a public space, deny that they've ever taken it. And I understand why people will do that as well. It's just an uncomfortable, weird conversation in a lot of respect. And so it's not an easy thing to navigate into society. Like I was in the Australian Army, and I know that the special forces in the Australian Army at times on deployment were given PEDs because it made them more likely to win the war. And
mate,
so,
that's such a different environment, though. It's almost like you say, if you were going into war and it's a risk-reward scenario, and it's a circumstances scenario. That's very much, war is no holds barred.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's almost. The point that I was getting to is the blurry lines between, in terms of communication, in terms of what you can expect anyone to say. I think if you grill, if anyone ever publicly asks anyone that they suspect has been either currently using or previously using, if they ask them that question directly in a public forum, I think the person asking the question is kind of dumb for asking it in that way. Because no one, unless you're the Mike Yellow type who's very happily, openly saying, this is everything that I'm doing, whatever, then you're never going to get a straight answer, and it's going to cause discomfort. It's going to cause a disrespect. If you want to know the truth about what anyone has taken, the best way to do that is to earn their trust genuinely and respect their position in life. And these guys aren't, they're not back. Like I said earlier, you ever meet Mike Yellow? He's a great bloke. He's a great
choice.
Yeah.
And let's be honest about Mike. He's more interested in aesthetics than he is in arm wrestling. Yeah. His goals and what he's doing is totally different. And the other thing,
he looks like he's been carved out of Zeus's tooth.
Yeah. But the other thing that blurs the lines too is the term PED and steroid. These are vastly different terms. Like depending on what you're testing for, you can go to your local GNC and you can get 50 different PEDs. You know what I mean? What's in my pre-workout right now?
It's on the water list.
To get me to go to the gym for the second time today and not fall asleep has banned stuff in it. For me, do I look at that as an advantage? No, I'm just getting to the gym. So it's really people will lump the idea of banned substances and steroids all together and act like it's the same thing.
I think people get passionate about it, don't they? Because a lot of the time, it's almost like there's a cut and dried approach to the topic, and it is anything but cut and dried. There's a lot more grey than there is black and white in a lot of those areas.
There's a ton of
gray.
I
think if you're on either side of the line, trying to sort of over-justify either way or oversimplify either approach is not really beneficial for anyone. Because that will create the passion in the other side of the argument. They'll be like, what the, and it's a lot of grey, I mean, there's a motorcycle race on the Isle of Man called the Isle of Man TT races, right? Most dangerous motorcycle race in the world. Bikes there getting up to like 200 miles an hour on country roads going over a mountain. It's ridiculous, you know. Now, if you go and see that, now every year you look at, and the bike is advancing. The bike is getting better. It's getting faster. Brakes are better. Suspension's better. Tyres are better. Now, on the day where it's dry and conditions are right, you can see some ridiculous stuff over there. And I think they're probably the lap. I think they may even be over 130 mile an hour average lap. Their lap record now. It's certainly up in that kind of echelon, right? High 120s to 130. So you can look at now and you'll see one of the riders of today. Okay. Now that rider of today might not be considered amongst the greatest riders in history, but there are a number of riders in that field who have done that high 120 lap, maybe 130 lap. And everybody stood at the side of you. If you're ever at the side of the circuit of the Isle of Man and a bike goes past you, you cannot help. If that was a fucking alien riding the bike, you'd still be like, aliens are bad, motherfucker. Anybody that goes around there like that, or anything that goes around there like that, your hat's coming off, you know? And that's cool as hell, and you get to see that incredible superhuman feat of wow. There's also something to be said when you look back in the history books and you look at some dude that did 118 mile an hour lap in 1971. And a fucking thing with, 1964. He was riding a bike. Some of the section of road was like cobbles. And the bike had drum brakes and no suspension. And was twin shock. And was a crocker death trap by modern standards.
Yeah,
and if you got on it, you'd be frightened to ride to the chip shop. And then they say, and that motherfucker went round that course, and the average speed was 118 miles an hour. And there's you know what I'm saying? There's that trade-off of perception where you look at that, and if you ride 100 yards on that bike that he rode it on, and think, Jesus Christ, it's a different thing. It's not black and white. It's grey. Making that comparison, take anybody from any era, put him on that bike and see how fast he goes around then. Mm. So, anyway, we get off topic. Tom Nelson, relax, we're getting back on. Now then, here we go. The match between Rob Bidgen and Ryan. I love the idea. I love the idea of a clean arm wrestling match. Okay? I love the idea of it not having any steroids in there. But I also love the idea of good arm wrestling matches, and I'm not sure that unless Ryan was hot,
come on, Neil. Oh, come on.
Could do anything with Rob. So let me finish here, right? Okay.
Neil, that's
when you look at a situation, right?
Ryan's going to take his arm.
Look at a situation, I would be making the estimation in my mind on an arm wrestling match about that arm wrestler as we know him now. Not that arm wrestler when he has full blown AIDS. That arm wrestler as he is now against that arm wrestler as he is now. Not necessarily that one guy's clean, one guy's full of steroids, whatever that is, try and take that out of the mix and just look at the ability of that person against the ability of that person at a given moment in time at a weight. Is it a good match?
It was always me fighting uphill, 100%. Like that's. I'll never deny that. I'll never come in saying, "Hey, I was a favorite." But people often mistake my ability to, or my willingness to believe there's a way to win, as they mistake that for me trying to convey that I think I'm superior. And that's the difference. That's the difference is I'm never afraid to take a match. And people joke about it saying that, I would take a match with Levan because I might think my pinky might have something on him or something like that. And it actually, that kind of meme highlights the point that I actually do believe in that I'm just willing to take matches and
lost, at all.
No, I don't. Every time I lose, I'm like, shit, yeah, I felt like for me, if someone is just overall flat out too strong in every single position, for me, what I feel then is I just go searching for where's the horizon to identify the crack. And then once you've felt where the crack is, you're like, oh shit, the crack's over there. So you know where to invest your future training energy into. And then it's about trying to get a freaking foot in the door of that crack and then prying it open over the next couple of years or whatever. But for me, a match that can look one-sided can feel like progress to me. And yeah, Rob was one of those matches for me, and I'm not going to deny that at all. I've done that repeatedly. Justin Bishop was that for me in 2017. If I go back before that, Danny Tesh was that for me back in 2015. It's always been the way for me. So that was definitely the match, in respect to its balance, undoubtedly. As to whether I think I was going to win the match, I was planning on it. I was going to do everything within my power to. I had no dramas doing the drug testing on there. That wasn't the reason the match fell over in any way, shape or form. I was just very much happy to tell Rob exactly what had been done in the past. And he was like, yeah, cool. No worries. As long as you tell the drug testing people exactly what this is so they know what's in the profile and all this kind of stuff. And it was all good. The shitstorm that happened on social media was blown way out of what reality was in many ways, shapes or forms. And the truth of it was that, it logistically was getting too difficult, to meet a standard that I could afford and that Rob deserved to get it started. That was pretty much the reason why we came to a sticking point. And instead of that sticking point being handled well by both myself and Rob, we handled it poorly and it ended up being a shitstorm on social media. So I apologize to Rob, Rob apologized to me, and we're all good. And we'll go from there. But that's pretty much it.
Now, if you're both at the Arnold Classic Europe, in October, the interesting thing would be that after the show there, if any of you in any kind of condition, you'll get to roll around and play around and get a feel for things.
Yeah. And that's the thing.
That'll be interesting.
Side table pulling to me is just as interesting. And high five to Hermes Gasparini for being the king of that. I think side table pulling is awesome. It means something. It doesn't mean the same thing, but it still means something, and you still learn and grow as an arm wrestler. If you get to touch anyone's hand, you download their data, you feel it. There's always context, but yeah, it means something. Of course it does.
Now then, I'm conscious, guys, we've just gone over the hour mark, so I reckon we're going to have to wrap it up at this point in time. I think that's quite an emotionally charged episode of The Fix. But
I can't believe you told me I had to get fully on gear to be on the match with Rob.
Yeah, that was mean, man.
Listen,
that was mean.
I know that might sound cruel to you, and I'm like you, Ryan. You're a good dude. I'm a big fan of Ryan Bowen, as you know. I have a lot of time for you, mate. I think you're ace.
Yeah.
You're a very, very good arm wrestler. You've made an absolute success of yourself in what you do in the sport, which is beyond admirable. You'll shock a lot of people because you're a lot better than people think.
Here comes the butt.
I just think that Rob would have been...
Yeah, and like I said, that's cool.
I may be wrong. In fact, it'd be kind of cool if I was wrong, but I don't think I'm wrong, right? I think if you got in a room with Rob and you just like gripped or mucked around with Rob, you just went, oh, yeah, and you would literally walk out of that room and think, fuck. That is honestly what I think. Because you're a smart lad, and I think you would walk away going, oh,
no,
okay.
well, the closest real life data I have to Rob is John Brzezink's words to me whilst training with him. And John said to me, this was a year ago, before I was ever talking about a match with Rob, but we were just talking about WAL potential athletes, and Rob was the man, so it was like, well, one day I want to get to Rob. And John said to me, Rob will feel just like I feel. In terms of hand control, outer straps, threat, he said, Rob feels just like I do. So that's what you need to be ready for. If you want to face Rob, you've got to be ready to face what I feel like right now. So and that's me believing John. I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of what I expected.
I've pulled a lot of guys for a lot of years. at all weights, supers, middles, everyone. John Brezink, Gary Goodridge, Sharon Remes, in competition, out of competition, Jerry Caderet, Michael Todd. I've won and I've lost, but I've arm wrestled a lot. Rob's really fucking good.
He's in the weirdo category, yeah.
Like, there's a lot of guys that you think are in the weirdo category. Rob really, really is. As Paul said earlier on, Rob's a bit like Vitor Belfort, in that he might come and a guy who's really good and doesn't fear him in any way and has some tool there might get a result that day. But I can pretty much say with confidence that you rerun that match 10 times, the next 9, Rob will pause on the bum and shout to the crowd. If the Rob shows up that's the Rob, the guy shows up that's come really ready and geared, and Rob is he's one of my favourite people. I consider Rob a very good friend of mine in and out of arm wrestling. I end up talking to Rob for hours at places. He's a fascinating character. He's deep individual. A lot going on in his head. And God damn, he's dangerous. Really frigging dangerous. Really got a lot of weapons. And that's why I sort of instigated the Sasho suggestion, and I want that because everything that Ray said earlier, I agree. Sasho, if he's not the man at 90 kilos, in most people's minds, I'm going to say that if you went to everybody who's really in depth with the sport and you said, name me the top 3 guys potentially at 90 kilos in the world, Sasho is one of them 3 names. So if you're saying to Rob, okay, in order to get that recognition, who do you want to arm wrestle? That is a classic East versus West respect barometer set, isn't it? Because the guys that know Rob, I mean, if you've spoken to Devon Larratt and you've said, oh, I'll do this to Rob, or this could happen to Rob, and I know I caught a clip it on what Devon.
I don't think Rob's worried about you at all.
Because Devon knows what Rob's capable of.
Yeah.
And so there's a snapshot of opportunity to get something on Rob, but 5 times, 6 times.
Yeah. Hey, talking about other freaks, I want to put a plug in before this episode's out. It's this weekend, Lachlan Adair and Ryan Scott, the number 1 in Australia, will be determined officially. It's going to be live. It's in Bunbury, which is 2 hours south of Perth in Western Australia.
So maybe that will have happened.
Yeah, by the time you're seeing
it next week, that will have happened the prior weekend. This is next week's fix. Look, we're going to shut this one down, ladies and gentlemen, and get on to our next episode. I want to say a massive thanks to my co-host, as always, the voice of arm wrestling, the voice of reason, the man with the greatest haircut in the sport. Just got back off his paper.
I thought I was the Justin Timberlake of arm wrestling, yeah.
We're going to go with that. We're going to go that Justin Timberlake.
Justin Timberlake.
Yeah, sure.
Ryan Blue Bowen, the man that you may see in October, popped off his tits on wobbly eggs, trying to go headlong through Rob Vigent Jr. Mate, just before we sign off, Ryan, I'm buzzing that you're back available to pick for that bloody battleground, mate.
Yeah, good.
Because I actually think that's your wheelhouse. Really? I think with Ray in there, Froda in there, some of the other guys that we're looking at who are absolute warmongers, guys who are just going to go and go, I think you love that. I think one of your big strengths is the endurance and the fact you'll go all. I think that could turn into a bloodbath. I can't wait. I cannot wait. That's going to be awesome. And last but by no means least, ladies and gents, it's the White Oak, Paul Linn. Telling you, bad man, watch for him. We will see you next time right here on The Fix. Until we do, take it easy, poops.
What grabs your eyes on that, if anything?